Welcome to the first Throwback Thursday of Season 7. Now, if you don't know what this is Throwback Thursday on the GMB YouTube channel, where we look back at all of our issues that we talked about throughout the 7 years. Basically, like education, all the stuff that we talked about throughout the seasons. Mostly education. And I'm going to explain why on Friday. Because y'all might be asking, don't you ever get tired of these education shows? Let me explain this. I'm going to explain part of this. I'm going to explain right now. I'm going to explain to you on Friday. One of my main reasons why I talk about education and why I'm passionate about this is basically because to educate parents and kids about why school is very important. And me doing these education issues on every episode is basically a teaching tool to teach parents that if your child doesn't go to school, you could go to jail. And also another thing here is to decrease juvenile delinquency. So if you want to sit up here and say like it's just about the money, you're dead. You may be right, but it's not about the money. What it's about here is teaching kids like, oh, when I get older, I might want to have to get up early to go to work. That's right. And you gotta learn. You have to be in there on time. Get to school on time. Same thing. You had to learn to be at work on time. You cannot be late. If you're late to class, you late to work, then that's what can happen to you. In some instances where we talk about education shows, we deal with a bunch of issues. Like this video you're about to see in just a minute. We've been focusing on dress code throughout the years, and one of the things that we have tried to focus on was the look of hats in our schools. Basically, like this. You're wearing a hat like this, eyes down, can't see the eyes, wearing no lost sunglasses. But we're going to look at the basis and where it came from. Let's take a look.
The basis is started because it can hide drugs, it's improper, and you're indoors.
I believe, in my opinion, that it came as a result of students hiding drugs in their hats once upon a long time ago.
From what I've heard, it stems back to when there was a lot of increased violence in the schools, and kids would wear their hats down really low and wear a hood over them so they couldn't tell who was who. So they banned hats so that everyone could be identified.
Originally, the hat rule came in place because they did a major change in the discipline policy back in 1998 or 99. And at that time, there was a situation where kids were wearing hoods up over their head, and it signified it did one of two things. The first thing it did is it said that the drugstore was open. And the second thing that it did is anytime somebody wanted to see who the kid was, they'd pull the strings down and they'd cover their face so you couldn't tell who they were. So when they went through the process of developing that code, they decided that no hats, no hoods and stuff that blocked the vision of the face could be allowed.
So this is basically what it's like. You're walking around class with a hat. Walking in the halls, getting to class. I'm going to class, I'm going to my next class, I love my class. And so I was like, hey, take off your hat. And what am I wearing a hood? It'd be like this. I'm going to class, I'm going to class, I'm going to class. Hey, take that hood off. That's why hats and hoods are not allowed, because it can hide drugs, weapons, and you can see the face. So the process goes to where you can't be wearing hats and hoods because you have to be identified to block the vision of the face. You can also chase after someone, which is what this is why this video came in, a 6-minute video. We're not going to play that, but I can tell you this: I never wore any hat in school. If I did, I was told to take it off. I take it off. If I ask why, then I know why, because it's a distraction in the environment. And in public places, you cannot wear. In public places like courthouse, you're asked to remove your hat out of respect. And on this week's Give a Break Saturday, we're going to tell you the things, we're going to talk about courtroom etiquette. Because if you go into court, you need to know about what you need to do and what you not need to do when your cases and all. Like, don't show up late, don't be wearing baggy clothes, don't show tattoos or piercings, don't have messy hairstyles like this. Because they like this. Not the emo Pierre look like this. All that's going to be explained on Saturday. I just want to throw in 2 cents here because basically what I wanted to do was to say, hey, hats are prohibited because it distracts you to the learning environment. And because people can hide drugs in there. That's literally the whole basis. So bottom line here is this, folks, boys and girls. No hats in school. If your hat's to take it off, take it off. Period. No exceptions, no excuses. Alright, coming up next, 2 stories about an operation that removes half of the child's brain. It's called the Hemisphererectomy, and we're going to tell you what it is and introduce you to 2 people who had this operation. Stay with us. Last season, we brought you a story about an operation that removes half of the person's brain. I watched this several times before the broadcast, before I did the actual show, just to learn what it is and how it happens. It's an operation that happens when the child has a seizure either on the right or left side of the brain, and they have to remove the seizure part of the brain so that it doesn't happen again. In tonight's 2 stories, that's exactly what happened. That was to where this little girl you're about to meet had an operation that removes half of the person's brain. Half of her brain. But the parents decided that wasn't it. So after the drugs, they decided, you know what? Let's do it. Here's Deborah Roberts.
Brandy Binder is a 13-year-old junior high school student in Colorado Springs who loves music.
I daydream, about being a singer.
She has big dreams and the obsessions of any other teenage girl.
And you talk about boys?
A little bit.
Sure do.
Brandy's normal life is a testament to her parents' determination and the power of a child's brain.
What about when you meet new people? Is it hard to explain to them?
I don't want to tell him right away. I'll wait for a while.
And how do you explain it? What do you say to people?
Well, I just tell them straight out I got half of my brain taken out.
You say that? I have half my brain taken out.
Uh-huh.
And do people look shocked?
Here it comes.
Brandy's life started out so perfectly.
When she was born, we said, hey, we have a normal baby. Whew. You know? Here you go.
Stephen and Cindy Binder remember watching their new baby grow. Everything seemed to come naturally. Until one day, something went wrong.
Brandy was just a little over 4 years old, and she started developing some eye twitching. And shortly thereafter, she started new symptoms like teeth grinding, excessive drooling, unable to swallow. I'd get up and I'd think, oh, what's wrong with her? And I'd just go in there and lay with her. And I'd listen to her heartbeat and I'd think, what happened to you?
You hear me, baby?
Their daughter was suddenly having powerful seizures like this one.
Ready? Can you move your arms?
One minute Brandy was playing, then without warning she'd slip into a drooling trance. Her parents took her to dozens of doctors, but none could explain why this was happening. Eventually one doctor diagnosed epilepsy and prescribed medication, but Brandy's seizures only grew worse.
Every day I would open the phone book and I'd call a new doctor because nobody could help. Nobody, we'd go in and the doctor would scratch his head and say, I don't know what's wrong. Let's run some tests. And I'd say, well, geez, these tests are already done. And, so another doctor did these tests. And why is she growing worse every day? What's wrong with her?
Brandy's seizures were so relentless that her parents began recording and logging them.
On a good day, it was considered to be 150 to 200 seizures.
That was a good day?
That was a good day. We averaged anywhere from 10 to 15 seizures an hour, and it went on day and night.
This seizure lasted nearly 4 minutes. Only 3 minutes later, as Brandy struggles to recite a nursery rhyme, it happens again. The binders became desperate. Brandy's IQ had dropped dramatically. She'd lost 20 pounds, and she was taking up to 40 anti-seizure pills a day.
There's two fears. One, that the seizures were damaging her brain. And two, the drugs were damaging her. So it was a fight for time. We needed to find something fast. And as time went on, the doctors became more confused. They weren't sure what this was.
Finally, at the University of California in Los Angeles, doctors pinpointed the trouble.
We concluded that this right hemisphere was the source of her problems, and this is what it looked like.
Dr. Donald Shields discovered that the seizures were firing mostly from one side of Brandy's brain and were caused by a rare disease called Rasmussen's encephalitis.
And I said, wow, that's great. That sounds like you could take a drug and get rid of that. So I asked the doctor, well, what's the ultimate cure for this disease? And that's when he said removal of half the brain.
How do you even react to that kind of news? That the only way to give your daughter a life is to remove half her brain?
Well, I didn't accept that. I said, can we try some drugs, or do we have to do this right away?
New drugs did not help. The binders were now forced to consider that horrifying option, the hemispherectomy, surgery to cut out most of Brandy's diseased right brain.
The binders were terrified. Would the surgery leave their daughter totally disabled? They knew at the least she'd come out paralyzed along her left side, since it's controlled by the right part of the brain. And would she be able to think and to learn? The right side of the brain is also linked to things like creativity and problem solving. Would Brandy lose those abilities too?
We were up, pacing the hallways. Should we go through with it? This is such a dramatic operation for our little girl. Should we go through with it?
Let me ask you something. Do you want doctors to get rid of your seizures? A lot or a little? Why? Why, sugar?
You know, we didn't have a choice. It was obvious that what Brandy needed was to get rid of the seizures.
Surgeons agreed to try and preserve Brandy's motor skills by removing only a quarter of her brain. But immediately after the 12-hour operation, they knew their efforts had failed. She began seizing again. Now there really was no other choice. Most of Brandy's right brain would have to go.
I knew that my little girl would come out half paralyzed, that she would be wheelchair bound, that she was going to lose the ability to dance like a ballerina. She would never be able to do another cartwheel.
5 days later, the second operation. This time, 9 agonizing hours. Cindy and Stephen waited and wondered.
When Brandy woke up, how would she respond to us? Half of her brain, half of herself was taken out. Would she still recognize us? Would she still have the memories that she had from her past?
Would Brandy still be Brandy? Would we still have our little girl?
Bruised and battered, Brandy emerged from the operating room, no longer seizing. And to her parents' relief, her memory was still intact. But she lay dazed, paralyzed on her left side, and with an ugly scar that crossed her skull. Underneath, nearly half her brain was now gone.
I sat around for a couple of days and I thought, how am I going to deal with a child that has half of her brain now? How am I supposed to cope? You know, Brandy was unable to do anything. She was in diapers. She couldn't sit up for a minute without assistance.
So you had to start over with her
Yeah.
as if she was a baby.
Yes, we did.
6-year-old Brandy couldn't understand what had happened, and her mother couldn't find the courage to explain.
And then one day she just plain old wanted to get up out of the wheelchair. And she said, Mommy, help me up. I want to get out of the wheelchair. And I bent down in front of her and I said, Brandy, honey, you can't walk anymore. You're paralyzed. And she started crying.
Brandy's heartbreak fueled Cindy's determination. Tirelessly, she contacted experts all over the country in a frantic search to help her daughter. A doctor in Indiana gave her the most critical piece of advice.
That doctor changed our life. She said, stimulate, stimulate, stimulate. Challenge, challenge, challenge your daughter, and don't ever stop.
That's the most critical advice, but would she take that advice and never stop doing it? Coming up, the conclusion of Deborah Roberts' story. And one other person who had a hemispherectomy tells her story. Stay with us. Return to our look about the hemispherectomy, an operation that removes half of a child's brain. With Brandy already having the operation, would she ever come out of it and learn how to do things like no one else does, like creativity and problem solving, or dance like a ballerina? Remember, Cindy said that Brandy wanted to get out of her wheelchair, but she said no. But it all came to light with one doctor's advice to challenge and stimulate and don't ever stop. But would that ever happen? Here again, Deborah Roberts.
The binders took that direction and ran with it. Brandy began intensive physical therapy, first at a rehab hospital in Denver, then at home. 12 grueling hours a day, every day. But soon the hard work began to pay off.
She started challenging herself, and anything she would do, 1 step, 2 steps, she would get all excited, say, hey, look at what I can do. And that attitude has never changed.
The binders were witnessing the miracle of the young brain. As it develops, a child's brain is full of activity, making trillions of vital connections and expending twice the energy of an adult brain. Amazingly, Brandy's active left brain was now taking over functions from the missing right side.
It is very malleable. It can reroute, it can form new pathways.
Dr. Harry Chugani, a neurologist at Wayne State University in Detroit, is a leading researcher in the study of the young brain.
Certain functions are reassigned. New fibers, new tracks, new circuits can be set up and established in response to the injury.
So a young brain can reorganize?
Absolutely. A right hemisphere.
For example, Dr. Chugani showed us brain scans of a child who, like Brandy, had a right hemispherectomy. The first image shows how the remaining left brain, seen on the opposite side in the scan, is activated when the patient moves his right arm, which is perfectly normal. But what's incredible is that the left brain also registers activity when the child moves his left arm.
So the left side of the brain is doing what the right side used to do, partially.
Absolutely, yes.
Might this have happened in the brain of an adult?
No, this would probably not have occurred in an adult.
That's because an adult brain is almost completely programmed. From age 10 on, the brain begins casting off connections that aren't used and hardwiring those that are. Since Brandy was only 6 at the time of her surgery, there was still time to remold what was left of her brain. Encouraged by their daughter's physical progress, the binders now focused on her intellectual recovery with the same dogged determination. So, 2 months after leaving the hospital, Cindy sent Brandy to a regular public school.
She just had little studs for hair, and she limped her way in. She was wearing a leg brace, and she had a huge helmet on her head, and she had a pink little frilly dress. The kindergartners took one look at her, and they all headed to the other side of the room.
I think we were all absolutely frightened. I think that we felt unprepared.
Pam Cole has tutored Brandy since kindergarten.
What were the other kids doing on this level that Brandy just could not do?
Well, they were basically doing cutting, coloring, pasting, and they were starting to write letters, numbers, words, some of them.
And she couldn't do any of these?
No, Brandy was unable to do that.
Slowly, she began catching on at school. At home, Cindy drilled Brandy in phonics, the alphabet, reading.
Stimulate, stimulate, stimulate. You know, those words rang in my ears all the time. And so she would go to kindergarten and she'd do what everybody did there. And then she'd come home and most kindergartners take a nap or go outside and play. Now Brandy hit the books for another 4 or 5 hours. You know, and we did this every afternoon for an entire year. Just became Brandy's life.
How much on sale was that coat?
7 years later, there's no letup. Brandy reads slower than most kids because of a vision problem, and some concepts like math are tougher for her to grasp. But she devotes long hours to her homework just to keep up.
Do you ever think that it's just too hard? No, not really. I work really, really hard because I want to get good grades. And so far, I've gotten all A's this entire year.
All A's. Did you expect that she would get to this point where she could earn A's in school?
No. I was just hoping, you know, C's and D's, if she could just keep up like that. But like Cindy said, challenge her as much as possible. And she started getting A's and B's and A's.
Do you ever think about quitting?
No. Because I want those good grades.
You want the good grades.
Yeah.
I gotta watch you a couple times.
And Brandy's completely ignored the experts who predicted she'd never appreciate music. It's her favorite hobby at home.
So what do you want people to know about you? I mean, if somebody just read that Brandy Binder has half a brain, what else do you want them to know about you?
I want them to know that I can do things just like they can do. And that I'm not different from anybody else in the world.
Right up and over.
So when your mom wanted to put a disabled sticker on your car, what did you think about that?
Well, I told her to take it down because I'm not disabled.
Brandy still has seizures, but now they're infrequent and brief, like this one, which happened while jumping on the trampoline with her sister Ginger. She's learned to let it pass, then go on.
Do you think that you could be whatever you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you sure about that? Why are you so sure?
Because I have confidence in myself.
Through struggle, Brandy has developed a strong will, a will that allows her to be just another kid, with hopes and dreams for a bright future, an independent life.
Don't help me anymore.
How come you don't want anybody to help you?
No, I want to do things on my own. I'm gonna grow up one day and I'm not gonna live with my parents all my life.
So it's important to you to do it on your own?
And I know I won't be able to drive or anything, but taking the bus isn't bad.
And so, to your doctors who are so surprised that you've come so far, what would you say to them?
I'd say, I told you I could do it. You didn't believe me, but I told you I could, and I was right.
You were right.
Redneck. What a remarkable story about doing the things you can do after the operation. But there's still more of the hemispherectomy to come. When we come back, you're also going to meet another woman, another female, who also had the hemispherectomy and went through the same process that Brandy did. Stay with us. Tonight we are focusing on the hemispherectomy. It's an operation that removes half of the child's brain whenever somebody has a seizure. It's called Musin something. It's a disease that triggers when a child has seizures in the brain. And doctors believe that removing half the brain can decrease those seizures. So far I met Brandy Binder, who already had the operation and went through the process of challenging and stimulating. Now I'm going to meet another girl. Her name is Casey Caves. And in this story right here, she went through the same operation. But would the parents find out about this, or just simply say, well, it's not like you have a choice of going back? Here's Robert Bazell.
Everything you do, say,
are, all shaped by the most complex living structure in nature, the 100 billion nerve cells of the human brain, an instrument of astonishing power, except when it doesn't work.
Are you having a seizure right now, Casey?
Yes.
Is this typically what happens?
Yeah.
Casey Cave's brain is out of control. For the past 4 years, it's been under siege, battered by an electrical storm within. Wave after wave of epileptic seizures, often hundreds each day, have nearly destroyed the 13-year-old's ability to use her right arm and leg, to speak, and even her ability to think.
You want some water, Casey? Is that what you're wanting?
What?
You want a drink of water? Is that what you're wanting?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, okay.
This is the story of the courage of one young girl and the faith of her family. It's also about the frontiers of medicine, attempting to understand the human brain, and the heroic efforts to save a single life. Casey Cave from Tulsa, Oklahoma, had been a bright and healthy child, and the pride of her mother, Regina.
This is a child that made straight A's and she didn't have to do anything. And now she just struggles to do the simplest task.
The first sign of trouble began on a hot day in the summer of 1992.
My first seizure, major seizure, about the 4th grade.
When we first met Casey in early November of last year, she had a clear memory of that day 4 years ago, when her life changed forever. But her epilepsy had damaged her ability to talk about it.
It was a hot day.
She was walking around the room with her head jerked and she was snatching things from the air. And her whole right side had kind of tightened up and her face was kind of drooping. We ran her to the hospital.
It was epilepsy, but not the more common kind that can be controlled with medication. She had a rare and devastating condition called Rasmussen syndrome.
It starts in one place and gradually, like a Pac-Man, eats more and more away.
Dr. John Freeman of the Johns Hopkins Children's Center is the expert Casey's parents turned to.
The only thing that can happen is that it will get worse. If it's on the left side of the brain, as with Casey's case, they will lose language and they will lose intellect. And the longer you wait, the less likely you are to get recovery.
Dr. Freeman offered Casey's parents a remedy, but it will shock you, just as it shocked Casey's parents.
The only way of treating it is to take out that bad half of the brain.
Isn't that a very primitive kind of medical
It's a comparable kind of medical treatment. It makes no sense to cut out half of the brain, but it's the only thing that works.
The operation, called a hemispherectomy, is brutally simple to understand. Surgeons remove the entire left half of Casey's brain, the half of the brain that is the source of the seizure. The empty space would fill with spinal fluid. And while a human being can survive such drastic measures, they face extraordinary risks. Casey's parents looked at their precious 10-year-old and could not imagine her with half a brain. For them, it was an impossible choice.
Johns Hopkins had called us and told us that, this is what your daughter faces. And I was very rude. I said, no way. We'll fight it. We'll beat it. I won't do this.
To really think that you might have to take out part of someone's brain, my reality says you can't do that. You can't live through something like that.
Hi, Casey.
So for 3 years, Casey's parents tried everything else. Minor operations, special diets, blood transfusions, and powerful drugs.
Have you taken your pill yet? Yes,
Casey's decline continued. Still, knowing the terrible risks involved, her parents couldn't bring themselves to go ahead with the surgery.
A parent has to say that my child's future is so bleak that I agree that you can take out half of her brain.
Yes, they have to say exactly that. And they have to say, in addition, that my child's future is so bleak that death would be preferable if, God forbid, it should come.
Casey's parents finally agreed in the spring of '96. The epilepsy had continued to destroy Casey's brain. She was wheelchair-bound. She couldn't keep up in school. Her mind was failing. For Casey, there had never been any doubt. She had always wanted the surgery to rid herself of the horrible seizures. Her parents had finally caught up to their daughter's resolve.
It got so bad, as she was doing so poorly. It wasn't fair to her. When she would have to go into a wheelchair, she was devastated. She wanted to be on her own. She didn't like being dependent on someone pushing her around and helping her up and down and around when she would fall. This is Casey wanted a life, and Casey deserved a life.
But what kind of life would it be? What doctors hoped for was an amazing transformation in Casey's brain. They hoped that when the diseased left half was removed, the right side of Casey's brain would reinvent itself, taking over the thoughts, memories, and language that had been on the left. But this operation had worked best in very small children. The doctors did not know if it would work in someone as old as Casey. So Casey and her family prepared for the worst, calling on their deep religious faith. Since the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, the surgery could leave Casey paralyzed on the right side. So in the weeks leading up to the operation, she practiced how to live left-handed.
She eats with her, brushes her teeth. Been trying to practice getting those shoes on with one hand, but boy, that's hard.
That's hard.
And because the left side of Casey's brain controlled language, the surgery could leave Casey unable to speak. So she practiced sign language.
Thank you, you're welcome. Yes, no, eat, drink.
We're hoping that's going to be helpful if we have some language problems after surgery.
No.
No.
It was November 8th of last year. The surgery was scheduled in just 4 days. All day long, friends visited to say goodbye. In a few hours, the family would leave Tulsa for Baltimore. For the doctors at Johns Hopkins, it is no routine event. Casey could die during the surgery, or she could survive without thoughts or speech.
It's awful. It's awesome. It's frightening. And any time we go into this, we go in with fear and trepidation. But the family has to be on our side.
Wes Caves was not sure he was on the doctor's side. In a cruel twist, just weeks before the scheduled surgery, Casey was able to get up out of her wheelchair, which gave her father one last chance to question whether they should go ahead with the radical surgery after all.
Does it make you wonder if you want to go ahead with surgery?
Yes, I want that surgery.
But now that you can walk, so you still think this is what we ought to do, though?
Yes.
Neurosurgeon Ben Carson is one of the pioneers of the procedure he will perform on Casey.
Does it give you pause to take out half of the child's brain?
Absolutely. It gives me pause every time I even look at the human brain, because, you look at this mass of amorphous looking stuff and you realize that this is what makes a person who they are.
This is a good day.
This is it. Everyone knows we're heading out of here and we're trying to start this trip.
Hesitation and prayer. The moment for the surgery had arrived. In a 12-hour operation, the doctors removed the diseased half of Casey's brain. Where there were billions of brain cells, there was now only empty space, the white area in this brain scan. Casey survived. Her seizures were gone. It would be weeks before anyone found out just what price she had paid.
But what price did she pay for this surgery? Was it her life or was it faith and prayer? And what would happen after the surgery when Casey Caves would come out looking like a vegetable? When we come back to the conclusion to Robert Brazel's story about the hemisphererectomy, will Casey survive or will she die during this operation? Stay with us for the conclusion of the story. Now the conclusion to our story. Casey Caves, before the surgery, has had her brain removed to control a rare form of epilepsy. But as you might expect, it's a very different case that you'll see. as she starts off on the road to recovery. But the question is, will that recovery last forever, or will she give up and leave that disease part behind? Here with the conclusion of the story, Robert Roselle.
It is 10 days since surgeons removed the left half of Casey Cave's brain. Her head is temporarily swollen. The change in her appearance is painful to see. She is in rehabilitation in Baltimore.
Good job. You feel it? You feel it more?
Her right hand is now paralyzed. Her right leg is weak, almost useless. And there's something else. Before the surgery, Casey had been a bubbly and optimistic teenager.
All right, you go ahead first.
Now she seems disinterested.
Okay. You okay?
Even angry.
It's in my hand over here. Yes, you can. Okay.
And though she could say simple phrases, adding to her agony is a profound loss of language.
Can you imagine the frustration of being unable to express yourself? She knows what's going on. She understands and she can hear. But she can't initially even reliably say yes and no.
As a parent, no one wants to admit their child has that deficit when they were a very verbal child. I wasn't really prepared for the frustration.
The terrifying epilepsy is gone. In its place, a swirl of confusion.
I need to look in here, the small square.
The right side of Casey's brain is all she had left. But remember, the doctors had told Casey's parents that the right side would get stronger, rewiring itself to take over the functions of the left half. But 10 days after the surgery, there's no sign it's happening.
Can you drink out of it?
Regina, who spends each day at Casey's side, struggles to maintain her optimism, but fights to stay strong for her daughter.
Are you going to go to the beach? Yes. Are you going to bed? Yes.
It's a week before Christmas, just a month since the surgery. Casey and her family are back home in Tulsa.
Let's see where this first. Okay.
She continues with her grueling day-by-day therapy. Gone are the cane and wheelchair she needed just 3 weeks ago. Her right side is remarkably stronger. Repeated practicing with the leg helps Casey's brain to find new pathways to control it.
Take the burden back.
And while Casey's upbeat mood has returned, she is still fighting a heartbreaking battle to learn to speak again.
Hello.
The sky is...
Yes?
Remember I had jeans on the other day? What color were my jeans?
How can the right half of Casey's brain possibly take over and allow her to speak again? New research is showing that in all our brains, nothing is concentrated in one place. Memories, thoughts, and words are scattered throughout. The hope is that Casey's remaining brain will form new connections, connections that will allow her first to find words and then to speak in sentences.
It's like a field of hay. It's grown up. There are no pathways. The words are hidden as treasures here, there, and everywhere. They've got to search around to find the right word.
He has a hard shell on his back. And that goes in when he gets scared.
When they find the right word, they've bent the grass a little bit. When they find that word enough times, they've beaten a path to that word, and it comes back.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Remember the jeans? Casey, you'll put on your...
Okay. Jeans.
Not green jeans.
Green jeans.
If you took out the left side of my brain, I wouldn't speak again, would I?
Probably not. And the reason is that your right side of your brain, the ability to find language, has been buried too long. If we did that for you at 10, I can assure you that you will talk again.
But Casey is not 10. She's 14 now. The question remains, is she too old to reclaim her speech? Her father, Wes, is still wondering if they did the right thing.
You sit here and you look at this and it's like, it's not like you have the choice of going back.
It's April, 5 months since the surgery. Casey's body has become markedly stronger. Her right hand remains weak, but with just one arm, she swims laps easily. With a brace on her ankle, she can walk even better than she could before the surgery.
Dead.
And most important, the disability her parents feared most is getting better. Casey is beginning to speak again.
What's our season? Spring. What color do you have? Blue. And red. That's right.
New connections in Casey's brain are emerging, allowing her to express her thoughts. Regina and Wes, for the first time in 4 years, are beginning to see a future for Casey. Their anguish about their decision, first to delay and then to have the surgery, has eased. Now, as they watch Casey get stronger and stronger, they stand in awe of her courage.
I've had her in therapy, thinking that somehow this kid's got a break. I have. I've gotten angry, I've cried, I've shed tears, and so I take her, and the therapists come out and say, Regina, this is the most well-adjusted child, you know. Then they kind of hint like, maybe you'd like to be in therapy, but actually, she does great.
Seven months after Casey's surgery, there's a reunion near Johns Hopkins. Dozens of children who've had the surgery over the past 10 years gather with their parents.
Can you give me 35 cents?
It's Dr. Freeman's first chance since the surgery to examine Casey and to talk with Regina.
Has Casey forgotten anything?
She remembers everything. She can remember things when she was little bitty, and we'll go someplace and she remembers it.
We've affected her performance, which is coming back.
Right. Slowly, but it's coming back.
This isn't slowly. Okay, slowly is in the eye of the beholder.
In fact, just a month later, Casey returns to school for the first time in 2 years. She's a freshman at Jenks High School. While Casey will always have some language impairment, no one can say how far she will ultimately improve. She has every expectation of a normal, healthy life.
Is it getting any easier for you now when you try to talk?
Yeah.
But it's still tough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you think of the word in your mind?
Yeah, but I just can't get out.
You know the word, but you can't get it out.
That's right.
And does it get really frustrating?
Oh, yeah.
And what is the most pressing thing on the mind of this 14-year-old?
How much do you want to drive a practice?
Like, real bad.
Your dad said you practice on the golf cart now?
Yeah. Pretty good, you know?
You're a pretty good driver?
Yeah.
Do people have to get out of your way?
No, come on.
Scientists do not understand exactly how her brain accomplished so much.
Most people in neuroscience realize that we don't know anything compared to what we will know 20 years from now. And 20 years from now, we don't know anything compared to what we will know 100 years from now.
After years of caring for her very sick daughter, Regina now faces a dramatic and very welcome change.
She needed me to help her get up. She needed me to help her walk in and out of the bathtub. She doesn't need that now, and I am thrilled that there was a part of me that maybe I needed to be needed. It says round to the nearest pin.
Of course, Regina still helps Casey with her homework.
Together, we sit at that table every afternoon, and we'll do this work, and we'll do whatever it takes. Yay! Awesome. Just awesome, girl.
Do you ever feel like the Lord is testing you?
I feel like the Lord has blessed us. I know she was a perfect child. Maybe I wasn't a perfect mother to have this happen to, but I'd like to think that I've done well through all of it. And I give God praise because He brought her through it. She's alive. And I'm thankful.
Thankful, even for a simple sentence.
We had a really bad rainstorm Monday. And she talked today. She said, oh, Dad, I got drenched today. I'm going, she got drenched today. Listen to her. I was just amazed.
Oh, God.
She's ready to take on the challenges, and if there were anyone capable of rising to that challenge, I think she's the one. Her faith stabilized us, and That's the reason that I tell her frequently she's my hero.
She is a hero, isn't she?
She's everyone's hero.
And she's also my hero. But speaking of which, how is Casey doing right after the surgery? Coming up, Robert Brazell is going to tell you, just right after the story here, that was back in 1999, Dayline did a story about it, and Robert Brazell is going to tell you. Stay with us. So it's been since 1997 since Dateline aired the Hemisphererectomy. But how is Casey Cames doing right after the operation? Once again, here's Robert Brazell.
10.
Of course, Regina still helps Casey with her homework.
Together, we sit at that table every afternoon, and we'll do this work, and we'll do whatever it takes. Yay! Just awesome. Just awesome, girl.
Do you ever feel like the Lord is testing you?
I feel like the Lord has blessed us. I know she was a perfect child. Maybe I wasn't the perfect mother to have this happen to, but I'd like to think that I've done well through all of it, and I give God praise because He brought her through it. She's alive, and I'm thankful.
Now, 2.5 years after the surgery, Casey is conquering a mountain of challenges to her independence.
This is great.
From skiing in the winter to snorkeling last summer, Casey continues to astonish her parents.
It was terrifying to me to think that she was out there swimming and she only had one arm and one leg. But she put the mask and the flippers on and away she'd go.
Hi, how are you?
Now a senior, Casey has become accustomed to using only her left hand in her day-to-day activities and needs very little help. Doctors say Casey's impaired right side won't improve much more.
Burn yourself, Casey.
Just as her body is adapting after the surgery, so is Casey's brain.
She is a totally different person when she started school this fall.
So, how was your Monday? Yeah.
She's more willing to talk. She's more willing to be open about what she can and can't do, and she gives it every effort. I think she's getting some of that old Casey confidence back.
I can talk. I can, really communicate.
Casey's brain continues to build new pathways, something doctors weren't sure it would do because of her age at the time of the surgery.
Okay, you're gonna do that. You're gonna do 2 more.
How is it with your speaking now compared to the last time I saw you?
It's doing better.
But sometimes you still have to struggle, right?
Yeah.
But right after the operation,
I can't.
you couldn't say blue. You couldn't say blue.
Right, and so it's like.
Now, but if I ask you what color the sky is, you say
blue.
But reading is the toughest of all.
Oh man.
And that is a big struggle, right?
Very, very, very. S-I-P equals 6.
Very good.
When doctors removed the left half of Casey's brain, they took away not only her language center, but her ability to read, too.
Next.
So she spends at least an hour every day after school learning to read again.
I-X-X.
But the one subject Casey's been studying hardest lately doesn't require much reading.
If you drive down a neighborhood street and you see kids playing, what's the first thing you should do?
Slow down and stop.
At 16, Casey's passion for driving is even stronger than it was a year ago.
So excited. Nervous, yes. Very nervous. I'm excited.
Casey scores 100 on her driver's ed exam, but getting behind the wheel is quite another test for her and for her parents.
It's kind of a hard thing to do, though. You've got a child that's paralyzed and half a brain, and to say, yeah, we're going to let you drive.
Can we go now? Is it safe? Okay, let's go.
Casey's car is modified so she can stop and go with her left leg and steer with her left hand. But the surgery also left Casey with no peripheral vision on her right side, and the state of Oklahoma initially denied Casey a driver's license for that reason. So Casey's getting special glasses to extend her field of vision, and she'll apply again.
Did it seem strange to be back there behind the wheel and you were the one that was in control?
Yes.
In many ways, Casey's parents are no different from the parents of any 16-year-old.
So it's not like you're going to be getting a lot of tickets?
That's right. I'm a cautious driver, safe driver.
But for Casey's parents, it's not the driver's license itself that matters so much. It's just a symbol of something much more important.
She wants her independence. I mean, she's already told us she doesn't plan on staying with us forever. She wants to leave this place and live her own life. And that's what she should do. That's what growing up's all about.
I feel very lucky.
If somebody said to you, you're an amazing example for so many people, what would you say?
I don't feel like an amazing person. I felt normal. I mean, like, you know, I had my brain cut out. You know, that's a big deal.
You can say that so easily. I had half my brain cut out.
I mean, it's no big deal. I'm really blessed. Yeah, that's it.
Just a few weeks ago, doctors performed the same operation Casey had on a 15-year-old Nebraska girl, Amber Ramirez, who also suffers from Rasmussen syndrome. Although doctors are concerned whether the brain can rewire itself in someone as old as Amber, so far she is said to be doing well.
In a couple weeks, we're going to be looking at another family who had Rasmussen syndrome and had another operation to remove half the brain. That's going to be in 2 to 3 weeks, so make sure to look for that. All right, going back to our viral break now. You might remember, or you may not remember. Pull it up on my computer here. You may remember that I talked about somebody taking a dump in the sink and then someone getting yelled at. That crap was freaking funny. Funny as heck. I mean, I watched it several times and I try to reenact the issue here. So, okay, here's the video of the principal rants about sink shit.
Okay, just so we're clear, when people don't shit in the toilet in the school, I'm going to pick up the shit. Because I'm not going to ask the custodians in this building to pick up crap when it's left anywhere else but in there. When they clean up the floor around the toilet, that's appropriate. When they pick up paper around the garbage can, that's appropriate. When we leave water underneath our tables in the I don't care, auxiliary gym or tap, that's appropriate. But if anyone in here thinks that that's funny, and this is the type of school you want to go to, then laugh about it, tweet about it, put it on Facebook, and let everybody in the building know that that's the type of school you go to. Because it's not. This is a building where we disagree, we talk about things, and we try to support one another. I'm not saying that everyone has to be happy with me all the time. And by the way, I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling at you as individuals. But I want you to know that the only way that stuff like this stops is if somebody out here finds out how it happens and says, dude, knock it off. I know for a fact that when Mr. Ryan finds out, you're going to be suspended for 2 weeks. I know for a fact that when Mr. Ryan finds out and you're planning on going to college, your college is going to find out. I know for a fact that if you're a senior, you might as well forget every single privilege that remains with you. You guys, and I invited you in because I know each one of you personally on some level. I need you to get that message out. It's not appropriate. This does not say who we are. And if the juveniles among us, listen, I want someone to just give me the finger. Give me the finger. If you're that angry, give me the finger. Leave a note on my desk. Egg my car. Don't disrespect the school building like this. This is the second time, and only the second time. It's the third time it's happened as far as I know. It's the second time that I've gotten to the custodians, but before someone else has cleaned it up. But if you want your principal to be picking So anyway, I apologize for bringing you in here, but you need to know what's going to happen every time this is left behind. I'm picking it up. No one else is going to pick it up. So I asked someone to figure it out, decide how you're going to leave in this building, and leave a note for somebody if you know who it is, or just get the message, dude, knock it off. And if it happens again, and you did find out, then leave us the note if it happens again. But it needs to stop. Are we clear? Again, I apologize for interrupting your learning for 5 minutes. You can carry on the class. You can let everybody know. You can let the teacher know.
It needs to be like this. Hey, pick up my poop. Okay. It's funny right there. You think of that day camp movie. Things right there. That's funny right there. Coming up on Friday, an hour about drunk teachers. Basically, from one video of a teacher who got drunk, she wasted the superintendent's time and the police time. And she got arrested for public intoxication. We're all going to look at Tulsa Midway teacher and substitute two Tulsa Midway teachers who got drunk. An hour you won't miss. That's Throwback Thursday. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks for our next Throwback Thursday. So we're going to be off the next 3 weeks. So we'll see you again in 3 weeks for Throwback Thursday. And we'll see you again on Give Me a Break Friday. For everyone here to YouTube, good night everyone. And I'll see you Friday.